Hi, my name's Neil France and I've been working with IIR for 5 years as an associate trainer. I specialise in performance improvement, particularly in the areas of communication, sales, negotiations, presentations. And I've worked internationally with the organisation from countries as far and wide as Azerbaijan, South Africa, whole of Europe. And the particular sectors that I get involved with are from pharmaceutical companies, finance businesses, right through to logistics. In the first session, we talked about change and the initial reactions to change. In this session, what we're going to be looking at is how do we help people through this change process? And more importantly, what is it that you have to do to ensure the success of any change? So what we're going to look at, first of all, is how people learn. And essentially, what we're looking at here is you have got a lot of work to do. If the change is to work and it's to stick, and what we mean by sticking is that it's being reinforced and you're observing the improvements in performance, it is going to be down to you as the manager to do a lot of work to ensure that this happens. Okay, so having set the scene, let's now have a look at what we're going to cover specifically. The aspect that we're going to cover first is something called the 4 stages of learning. Now, this is a process that you and I go through continually when we're learning new ideas. So let me give you an example. We go to the first stage of learning when you may be brand new into an organisation. So if you can take yourself back to the time that you went into an organisation for the first time, you were at stage 1 of the 4 stages of learning. And we call that unconsciously incompetent. Now, what that means is, it doesn't mean that you're stupid, it doesn't mean that you're thick. What it means is that at that particular moment in time, you did not have the knowledge and skills that you required to do the job effectively. Now, what that means is that you were making mistakes. However, because you were unconsciously incompetent, it meant that you weren't aware that you were making mistakes. You were trying your best, you were enthusiastic, you were motivated, but nonetheless, you weren't doing things right. So, after a while, when you observe other people, what happens is you move on to the second stage of learning. And we call this the consciously incompetent stage. Now, what's happened is, in stage 2, you've learnt more about the situation that you're in. You've acquired more knowledge, you've acquired more skills. But effectively, what this has done is it's made you consciously incompetent. In other words, you know you're not doing it right, but you don't necessarily have the right level of knowledge and skills to do things correctly. Now, there's an interesting situation that we find ourselves in here, because if we're expecting to make a change with people and they're having to learn new skills, when they get to stage 2, it's uncomfortable. They know they're making mistakes, they don't know what to do about it. So essentially what's happening here is we're affecting their motivation. And you will observe with your people, with new ideas that are being brought in, that there is a potential reduction in motivation. This can affect their attitude, and it's important that you as a manager get people through stage 2 as soon as you possibly can. Now, if we equip them with the right knowledge and skills, we give them the support, whether it's coaching, whether it's mentoring, whether it's a training course, what happens is they move on to stage 3. And at stage 3, they're at what we call consciously competent. Now, what this means is they have the right level of knowledge and skills, they're having to think about the decisions and the tasks that they're doing, but the important aspect is they're doing it right. So now they're starting to feel more comfortable. It still feels a little bit clunky, but at least they're doing things right. So praise and recognition, etc., should be given at this point to encourage people. Now, let's roll the whole situation on where we're starting to implement the changes, and the changes seem to be going well now. What can happen is people can go into stage 4, and at stage 4 they become unconsciously incompetent. Now, unconsciously incompetent, what that means is they're doing it right, but they're not even having to think about it. They're doing it almost automatically. But let's not forget, at this stage they're doing it right. However, and I guess if we look at a lot of your staff and the changes that you would like to implement, quite a number of them are going to be at this stage 4. Now, there's a potential danger for people to being at stage 4, and the potential danger is that they go from being unconsciously competent, that when there is a change, they go straight back to unconsciously incompetent. So we need to make sure that our people are conscious about the knowledge and skills they're requiring to ensure that the changes achieve the level of success that we want. Now, in the previous film, what we looked at was the initial reactions to change. And I think it's important now that we look at what do I need to do in order to sell in change effectively. What you're going to encounter pretty much straight away from some people in the company will be they say things like, I don't think I can change. Do they really mean I'm not going to make it work or I'm not going to change? Now, that is not something that, when you get to a particular age, it changes. It's here in the mind, and that's what we have to work with here. We have to overcome this reluctance to believe that they can change. And we're going to explain how to do that in a slide's time. There might also be a reaction that people say, well, this is my background and that's what I'm like, and you can't expect me to make these changes now. This again is just an attitudinal issue, and you have to go through this situation and help the person to understand that they can make a change if we can motivate them to. Finally, you will get people who are more senior. And I know these things myself, because as we get older, it is more difficult to adapt to change, but it doesn't stop us making changes. So again, you have to encourage and motivate these people to see the benefits to them of making the necessary changes. So essentially, we need to work out now, how do I sell in these changes internally in a successful way? And what we're going to look at is a slide which has effectively got a whole series of a checklist for you, which you need to go through and make sure, here's my change program, am I hitting each of these points? So let's have a look again at the top left hand corner, and we can see here with the strong left brain thinkers, they're going to be asking questions about, so if we're making changes, what's my target going to be? What objectives am I expected to achieve? And it's very important that you give these people objective, clear data. You need to be able to prove to them why these changes are required by the organisation. If you do not do that, then you're going to be in a situation where they are going to immediately undermine any efforts you make to make those changes. So do your homework, do the research, make sure it's very clear why these changes are required, and you will win that section of the group. The right brain, if we look at the R1 thinkers, what they're looking for is the opportunities that it can open up for them. So again, make sure that you give them a picture as to how this looks for the future, why it's required by the company in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months time, and how it's potentially going to help the organisation to move forward. On that basis, you can encourage them, they'll buy into it, they'll be excited by it, and that excitement with your team is very useful as a way of motivating others. There'll be others in this group that will see this as an opportunity to come up with some new ideas. And again, if you can give them space to be able to do that, that's a really effective way of winning this group over. If we look back to the bottom left-hand corner again, and we see the strong L2 thinkers, these are the people that we talked about before. They like structure, they like organisation, they like schedules. They don't like change unless they're involved with it. So it's important with this group that they take ownership. These are the people that are actually going to, day after day, make it work. They're practical. And essentially, if you can win them over by getting them involved in the plan, by helping them to work out the right schedules and how the changes is going to be implemented, that they can come up with ideas in terms of resources that may be required, the time frame that's sensible and realistic under the circumstances, you will win this group over. This is probably the second toughest group to make sure that you get on side. And then finally, we've got the people who are more people sensitive. Again, if you see this as a way of, this is going to give security, it's going to help people to enjoy their jobs, it's going to give them some challenges. If you can talk about how it's going to work in a syndicate way so that they can maybe work with some groups to help to decide on some of these changes, all of this will get the support of that particular quadrant. And what that means is you've then got a change program that's got every possibility for success. So let's summarize. What we've got so far is we've now recognized that people see the world differently. We've recognized the initial reactions that they could have to change. And what we've now got is a way of making sure that our program when we start to sell it in, and that could be presentations, it could be small workshops, it's entirely up to yourself as to how you do that, but it's now got the best chances of success. So here we are, we've sold the change program in, everybody seems to be accepting it. Excellent, well done. The next phase is, how do I continue to make it work? How do I ensure that the changes stick and that they continually deliver the outcomes and expectations that we want? And that's what we're going to look at here. So we've come up with another slide which is going to help you to act as a checklist to make sure that you're addressing these things. So, for example, if we look in the top left-hand corner, these people, as we've already recognised, facts are very important to them, targets are very important to them. So we make sure that all of these are in place. We're agreeing the priorities that they are required to hit. And what this is going to do is they're going to say, right, okay, so I understand why the change is required. You've given me all of the facts. I can understand that. That makes sense. You've now given me new targets. The targets are realistic. They're challenging, accept, but however, I feel comfortable with that. If we look at the right-brainers, what we've looked at there is they're just excited by change anyway, because these people quite frankly get bored with doing the same thing over. So everything related to change and new opportunities is great for them. So again, you've got some areas there that you can encourage them in. The bottom left, here's the tough ones again. With these people, we have to make sure that they are very comfortable with the way that you're managing the whole process on an ongoing basis. So feedback is important. Control of the process is very important. They will need to know that this is fitting to the plan, it's on schedule, that everybody knows exactly what they've got to do, and on that basis, they will feel very comfortable. So this includes you making assessments as you're going through the change process of where are we at the moment? Have the people got the knowledge and skills they need to get them to the consciously competent situation and enable them to enjoy the changes and to be thriving within this new situation? And then finally, we have the people in the bottom right. And here, they like to know that there's great teamwork happening because this is very important. They come to work primarily for the people. And you know, that's very important. These aspects, when you're implementing changes, you have to recognize that they go deep with people. You can't pay lip service to this. You can't just say, well, we'll muddle our way through that bit. If you truly need these changes to work and to be effective, then you have to address each of these areas that are covered under the slides. If you do that, you've now put yourself into a position where you've got a very high probability of being successful. And I wish you the best of luck with that.